Wake Me Up After the Apocalypse by Evil Goo. Chapter 6, Left Behind. The next time he woke up, she was still there, sleeping in the chair next to his bed, her head resting on her arms against the mattress, her short hair tickling the hairs on his arm. He wondered when she had cut it. It was much shorter even than when he had first met her. He was hungry. Exactly how injured was he? He didn't feel too bad, a bit sore, sure, but he'd certainly been hurt worse in the past. Should he get up and see if this place had a kitchen? Or should he risk Nami's wrath and wake her? Granted, she hadn't seemed particularly wrathful the last time he had been up, but now that he was healthy, she would surely change her tune and be more like the Nami he knew, right? The Nami who would kick his ass for waking her for no good reason. He also had to pee. He struggled with which took priority. He saw movement from the corner of his eye and recognized for the first time that there was a wall of glass in front of him, beyond which was only blackness, the lights turned out. It must be nighttime, only one fluorescent bulb flickering in the large room he was currently in. The reflection created on the glass, therefore, allowed him to see Trafalgar Law reading in the corner, sitting straight-backed in a hard wooden chair. He was frowning as he read, legs crossed. Seemed about right. He moved the sheets a bit to get up, then immediately moved them back into place with a sharp intake of breath. Law noticed, chuckling a little as he stood up. "I imagine you want pants," the man said softly, taking the sleeping redhead into account. Yeah, and to that point, why do I not have them?" "Had to burn your old clothes, and since she stuck around, didn't think it would be appropriate to dress you until she left." He indicated Nami with a jut of his chin, the volume of his voice rising a bit. The doctor seemed to have miscalculated a bit there. If Usopp had realized he'd been sleeping naked, he might have requested pants. Law really had no social tact, did he? "Could I have some now?" "I'll get you some scrubs. Clothes come at a premium here. Might be a while before we can get you something decent, but I'm not the one to ask. Oi, Namiya," he added, kicking at her chair rather violently to Usopp's absolute horror. "You got a death wish?" he asked, the only response a raised eyebrow from the surgeon of death. Nami stirred. Usopp thought he heard a mumbled but distinct, "Fuck off, skinny jeans." "Get up. A naked man wants some pants, and you should go back to your house and sleep properly." Nami rubbed at her eyes, peering up at the two men. "Usopp, you're feeling well?" Yeah, I think I'll survive." It was true. He felt much better already. He was still sore, but he no longer felt as exhausted and dehydrated. He wanted to move, mostly for the aforementioned reasons. She nodded sleepily, standing up, her chair making loud screeches against the floor with her jarring motion. "Okay. I'll be back in the morning, Usopp, and you," she pointed at Law with a finger far too close to the man's face, her eyelids drooping in an obvious show of her sleepiness. "Be nice. No, that's too much to ask. Just don't talk." Law seemed to take her snide remarks without offense or comment, shaking his head a little as she made her way out the glass door into the darkness, yawning very loudly into her hand. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. Law opened what looked like a file cabinet near the chair where he had been reading, but pulled out a square package that appeared to hold something in the same shade of toothpaste green as whatever god-awful thing Nami had on her body. Scrubs, he supposed? Law tossed the package into his lap unceremoniously. "Get dressed. I assume you can handle it on your own, since you seem to be sitting up without too much trouble." Usopp nodded. He could move his limbs much better now, though. "I'm starving." "Thought as much. I've been giving you some nutrients through that." He nodded at something at Usopp's side, and for the first time he realized he was hooked up to an IV, a clear bag attached to the metal structure at his side. He stared at his hand, where the needle was inserted, looking unsure. But it doesn't really help the feel of an empty stomach. I'll remove that now so you can change. After removing the IV, giving Usopp some small amount of privacy to struggle into his pants and V-neck scrub, and leading him carefully to the infirmary bathroom, Law left to see what food he could bring his patient. Overall, he seemed a lot more attentive as an actual doctor than Usopp had ever seen him. Was this really the same guy? The scary guy who declared war on an emperor of the sea? This time alone, conscious and feeling his strength returning by and by, gave Usopp a lot of time to think. Nami's hair was short. Her face looked a bit longer. Her eyes were tighter, angrier, something. There was something off there. And she didn't want to talk about Wano, which was a huge red flag. Usopp was feeling really perplexed and disquieted. Nothing made sense. Where even was he? Where was Luffy? Luffy wouldn't care if a sick person needed rest. He would be bouncing on Usopp by now, loudly proclaiming him healthy enough to go off on some adventure or other. Maybe he was injured too. No way would Luffy allow them to leave Wano without dealing properly with Kaido. So they must have won. And Luffy was unconscious somewhere too. That had to be it. Right? Then why was Law still with them? With Kaido defeated, the alliance had ended, correct? Usopp splashed water from the sink onto his face. Too many questions swimming through his brain and not enough answers. And on that note, what the hell? He stared up in the mirror, almost not recognizing the man looking back at him. For a second, he almost thought he was wearing one of the fake beards he had donned for so long in Wano, though this was a rather pathetic example, all patchy and untrimmed. That was why his face was itchy. He hadn't really thought about it, so used to his disguise in recent weeks, and only now did it strike him that having a beard right now didn't really make sense. His skin looked strange, too. Far too yellowed and sickly, his eyes bloodshot, and the shape of his face was slightly different from what he usually saw in the mirror. He looked older. Well, that had to be the beard. Beard. Wait. How long had he been sleeping? Nami had said a long time, but maybe he needed a better, more concise definition of the term. What kind of Rip Van Winkle nonsense was this? He had obviously missed a lot, and it was starting to really make him nervous. No, he'd passed nervous a while ago and skipped right into paranoia, with a side of ringing doubt. Nami was keeping something from him. He would have to get answers when he saw her again. He could handle it, no matter how bad it was. It had to be better than this ignorance and confusion. When Nami arrived, he wasn't in bed. She heard water running, which eased her tension. Was it just a dream? Did something happen? Is he in surgery with Law? And let her know he was just in the restroom. It was now about 8 a.m., and she had brought breakfast. 3 plates did not balance well on one tray, so she had conned B into helping her carry one tray in exchange for her last Crimin t-shirt. It would probably just have ended up ruined eventually anyway, the way Nami went through shirts. Let the kid have it. You can put the plate down on the table over there, Nami said, indicating the hospital bed's side table with a nod. She set her own tray on an unoccupied bed. There really wasn't enough furniture in the room. She expected Law was in his own bedroom attached to the east side of the building and would be checking in on his patient soon. Almost as if he sensed her presence, or read her mind, Usopp came merrily through the bathroom door, flinging it open and feeling his face with a grin. The horrific beard was gone, and he called out when he saw her, "Oi, Nami! Got Try to give me a razor. Much better, right?" He was so energetic. Like he hadn't just been through some tranquilized 4-year sleep enslaved by a monster plant. But then, he probably didn't know that yet, huh? That's the guy? Bee asked her, sounding less than impressed. That's the impressive pirate sharpshooter Straw Hat Mom mentioned? Nami was barely listening. The way he was speaking and walking, and with a clear face, just looked so very Usopp that she was struck silent for a moment, followed immediately by an overwhelming grin. She rushed forward, throwing her arms around him and pulling him into a hug. Usopp, you're up. He made a pained sound, a squeak, and she immediately released him, remembering his bruises and sore muscles. Oops. So, did I almost die or something? I mean, nice to see you too, Nami. He grinned over her shoulder. And who is this? Luffy make friends with another kid whose country we have to save? Does he have brain damage? Bee added unhelpfully, and Nami sighed, walking over to the girl, grabbing her shoulder and turning her full around. This is Bee. She's about to go eat breakfast with her mom, she replied/ordered, which was not at all well received, the petulant teenager shaking her head, mocha-glossed lips turned up in a sneer. Before she could make a snarky remark, however, Nami quickly reminded her of the prized name-brand shirt she would be receiving. Like a gift bestowed by a merciful god, the girl acquiesced, leaving the room with an overly dramatic bow to the redhead. Sorry about her, Nami said, and Usopp flung himself to the bed, sitting cross-legged and grabbing his steaming plate of eggs and fried tomatoes. And sorry if I'm freaking you out by acting clingy. I just haven't seen you in a while, and it's nice to see a friendly face. There, that would do. She wasn't sure how much she wanted to lay on him right away, but slowly, very slowly, she needed to give him all the facts. He had to know how things stood, even if it broke something in her to realize she was going to shatter her nakama's world. Where would she even start? East Blue? Their nakama? The date? Every topic was potentially traumatic, every turn of conversation pregnant with the promise of heartbreak. Usopp took one bite of the eggs, looked down, and then looked back up at her. Okay, I'm guessing there's something overly convoluted going on, so you may as well just fill me in. I get the feeling this is bad, right? Something bad happened in Wano. He kept mentioning Wano. Nami knew vaguely that it was a country in the New World, but why had his overactive imagination brought him there during his plant-induced dream state? It was bizarre, to say the least. No, not exactly. Let's start slow. What big questions do you have right now? Oh, I have tons. I think I can narrow it down to 2, though, and then you can fill me in on the rest after breakfast. Nami sighed, picking up her own plate and sitting in the chair by the bed to eat it. If he thought everything could be summarized in a single conversation, he was still far too optimistic. That wasn't something she thought she would apply to Usopp, but then again, his doomsday predictions and fears usually didn't end up being any more true than Robin's dark attempts at humor. 1, Usopp began, holding up a finger as he tentatively poked at one of the tomatoes on his plate with his fork. This food was not made by Sanji. That wasn't a question. Read the subtext, he demanded, his smirk a little hesitant. He was scared of the answer, she knew. The real question was obvious. Where is Sanji? He's not here. We're separated from our nakama. What? For how long? Nami poked at her own eggs haphazardly, moving them around on her plate. She opened her mouth to speak, but a strangled kind of sigh came out, sliding slowly into the words, It's been a long time. Almost 4 years. His fork clattered to his plate, and Nami didn't dare look up to see his face. 4? You're sure? That's how long it's been? Or that's how long until... That's how long it's been, Usopp, since I last saw you. That's how long it's been since you were last awake. Now, that was technically 3 questions. Eat your not as good as Sanji's food, and if you're feeling up to it, I'll show you around the village. I guess, if it was that long, it makes sense why Luffy went on without me. There was a clattering thump, and even Nami was shocked at how loud the sound was. The tray Usopp's plate had originally been on, ringing on the table as her fist hit it. Luffy would never leave you behind, she responded with conviction, and then stared at her hand, surprised at her own outburst. Usopp was silent for a moment, but there was something soft in his voice when he said, "You're right, of course. So then why? Later. Just know that it's no one's fault that we're separated." "Namiya, do we have any real clothes and supplies for your friend?" Law was back, coming through the door with a chart and pen in hand. "He's free to go this morning. Perhaps it'd be good to call a meeting to discuss assignments and inventory." "Yeah, I'll talk to the scholars about inventory and spread the word about a meeting. Say, after dinner." Usopp watched the two, back and forth, with wide, searching eyes, clearly trying to puzzle out something of the situation from them. In the end, he seemed only able to focus on one thing. "I see Nami got real clothes." And indeed, she had returned in a pair of jeans with a top she wore whenever she was on garden duty, though she had a feeling she would be excused for the day from her tasks to get Usopp settled. "I like the part about me getting real clothes, and where is my bag?" Law's nose wrinkled at the last, his lip curling. "We left it. It was completely infected and moldy. He was just barely out of reach from Nami's flailing hand, so she was unsuccessful in her attempts to smack the standing man, though her attempts seemed to shut him up effectively, albeit with a perceptible eye roll from the doctor. Oh God, how to handle this? Usopp didn't ask. He just looked at her, eating his eggs, his brow raised. She sighed. She had to tell him something, and it didn't feel right to make something up. She wanted to avoid overloading him, but she also wanted to avoid making him feel lied to. "You were infected by a kind of vine that generates paralytic spores. People infected can produce and spread the spores themselves, so it's pretty dangerous. Especially when the vines found their way into you when you're unable to move. Perfect prey. We couldn't disinfect your bag. I'm sorry, Usopp. We saved your kabuto, though." "Kuro kabuto," he quickly amended. "And that's good to hear, at least. Though without my pop greens, I'll be way less powerful. Might need to grow more when we get to the sunny." She had no idea what half of that meant, and willfully chose to ignore the other half. "And these," Law added, pulling Usopp's goggles from his pocket and handing them over. Usopp took them tentatively, turning them in his hands with a deepening frown. Something about the look set off alarm bells in Nami's mind. Why did he look so pensive so suddenly? "Your weapon is in my office. You can grab it as you leave," he finished, exchanging a look with Nami that clearly expressed his own concern over the reaction, head tilted to the side. Nami shrugged, unsure. "Usopp, do you feel like walking a bit? I can show you around while getting things organized for you." He nodded, but he was still looking at the goggles, a thumb brushing at the rounded lens. He looked shakier than when she had first arrived, as if he couldn't keep up the pretense of composure anymore. She had barely even scratched the surface.